Hey guys, one of the #1 comments that we get here on our YouTube videos about hair transplants is, why are you guys so anti-FUE? So we just want to state today that we are not anti-FUE and give you 5 reasons to choose an FUE hair transplant. These are 5 very important criteria that you should follow before choosing FUE. And if you meet all of them, then you are a great FUE candidate. 5 reasons to choose FUE. The first criteria is if you have thick, dark, straight hair.
It all starts with the donor hair. We've talked about it before. Thick, straight, dark, ropey hair. Predominantly from Hispanic descent or Middle Eastern descent. That includes, some patients from Europe, meaning Italy, Greece. Really strong, thick, dark, ropey hair. That's the first criteria. If you've got that, we're off to a good start.
The second criteria is if you have very minimal hair loss within your family history.
So when it comes to planning for the future, in regards to your hair loss, whether you're young, old, or in between, you really have to look at your family history of hair loss. A while ago, it was always said that the mom side of the family, that could be the mom, aunts, uncles, grandfather, all on the mom side, determined your future hair loss or hair pattern. Then it switched over to it could be the mom side or it could be the dad side. And now we've gotten to a point where I've heard a bunch of doctors say that if you resemble your dad facially, so you're a man and you resemble your dad facially and he's bald at 55, then that's probably gonna be where you end up. Now this is nothing that's written in stone, there's no specific case studies on it, but remember, we're talking about an FUE procedure, who's a good candidate, who's not. So if your dad is bald at 55 and you're 25 looking to have an FUE procedure, even though it's minimal loss, then you're not a candidate for FUE.
I have a lot of guys that write me mentioning the mom side thing, and they say, oh, my mom's side has very little family history of baldness. And my mom's side has very little family history of baldness as well. My granddad is 90 years old on my mom's side and has pretty good hair for a 90-year-old. But my dad was bald by the age of 30, and I would have been completely bald by the age of 30 as well. So it definitely goes on both sides. Number 3 criteria is if you have very little hair loss.
So the FUE procedure is set up for guys that have just a little bit of a need for hair for 2 reasons. Number 1 is because the way that the hair is harvested, if it's done properly, you're not going to get as much good quality hair to transplant. So if there's less of a need, then the FUE procedure would fit that criteria. So let's start off by talking about, the guys that are fitting into a certain Norwood class. What I have here is a quick printout of the Norwood classification. You can get this on any Google search. I put a rectangle around a class loss of number 1 and number 2. That's designated FUE. That, if you're in there, you fit that criteria. By the way, if you're down here in a 6 or 7, you're not a candidate for an FUE procedure. So don't even go any further. In this gray area, on a future video, we're going to talk about the gray area, and that's going to get very dicey. But for this video, you're only a candidate for FUE if you fit the Norwood class 1 or 2.
Number 4 criteria is if you are using a preventative treatment and are happy at using that forever, you're good with that, you're very consistent, and you have very little hair loss. One of my very good friends has had an FUE procedure, and he had very little hair loss, and he's taking finasteride and is totally fine on finasteride. He's happy taking that, and it's worked out really well for him. So if you meet all of these criteria, it can work out great.
I'm the kind of person that purchases insurance. Once you have a family and once you get a few kids, hey dude, you gotta have life insurance. We have to have car insurance. Well, guess what? If you choose to go down the path of FUE and you meet the rest of the criteria, you need to give yourself an insurance policy. So then it turns out to be a 2-pronged approach. One is the type of procedure that you're going to do. In this case, it looks like we're going down the path of FUE. Then what preventative treatment are we going to choose long-term so that you do not have significant hair loss down the road where that initial FUE procedure may have been a bad decision. So plan on signing up for a lifelong preventative treatment.
Number 5, you do not want a linear scar, which is understandable, but instead are willing to settle for polka dots in the back of your head, but also settle for less hair. I get written by guys on Instagram, I don't know why they pick Instagram, but almost every day, who are either interested in having a hair transplant or have had a hair transplant. And one of the number one kind of messages that I get is from guys that have chosen FUE and had bad experiences with it. So I'll show you one. This is an Instagram picture that I received last week. And this guy's donor area was completely over harvested, and it's a really common problem. So what they do is they go, okay, we'll give you X amount, 5,000 grafts, however many grafts, and they take out that many grafts. But the problem is they over harvest to the point that it's not just little polka dots, it's literally an entire strip of that donor area doesn't really have any hair anymore. It's been completely over harvested. And now that that donor hair is gone, there's no chance to even go back for another procedure. So instead of one small tiny little strip where they cut that hair out, you just get a giant strip of polka dots.
So part of the criteria, that, and this is the fifth criteria we're talking about, is for whatever reason, and it's okay if this applies to you, you choose not to have a linear scar. You just say, I'm not going to have a line in the back of my head. Now we take it to an FUE or a possible FUE procedure. So again, we're talking about everybody that fits the criteria, which means you have minimal hair loss, you're going to go on preventative treatments. But for those of you out there that still want to drink the Kool-Aid, that you're a candidate for an FUE procedure with either significant hair loss or somebody in some clinic tells you it's a great procedure and you're a candidate, there's a wall behind me that's made of sheetrock. Imagine if I took a 2-inch diameter cookie cutter and started punching holes in that wall. I'd have to punch a hole, skip a space, punch a hole, skip a space, punch a hole, skip a space. Because if I put them too close together, guess what? The wall would fall down. Well, that's what they're doing to your donor area when you fall prey to over-harvesting. So this video is trying to teach the patients out there to ask the right questions and make sure they fit the criteria before electing to have an FUE procedure. Once you've met the criteria, great, it's a great procedure.
To summarize, this is the difference between an FUE graft and an FUT graft.
So the differences from a scientific standpoint and how the tissue is extracted is obviously pretty clear. You're either taking out a strip of linear tissue just below the sebaceous gland, about 4 to 4.5 millimeters deep, or you're going to shave the entire back of the head and you're going to drill using a drill punch with either a 0.8, 1, or 1.2 millimeter punch. And you're going to do that 1,000 times, 1,200 times, 5,000 times. So I always like to end these videos with a story about you, our YouTube followers and people out there that are calling me, and you know I always answer my phone. A young man, 25 years old, who's suffering from hair loss, and he's going through a rough time, in Brooklyn, New York, calls me. And after talking to me for about 10 minutes says, you have no idea. I was just ready to push a button and take a plane ride to a place in Europe that's telling me they can do 5,000 FUE grafts. This young guy, done properly, unfortunately for him, you might not be able to get 1,000 FUE grafts if you do it the right way in the back of his head, but he's not a candidate for FUE because he doesn't fit a lot of this criteria. So why would anybody who claims to be a doctor, whatever the case may be, a clinic in Europe somewhere, tell this guy to get on an airplane and come over and have 5,000 FUE grafts removed? That's what we're trying to help you guys with. So that's a true story. And by the way, moving forward a few days, he's gone to 3 or 4 different clinics in New York City, and they had told him that he's not a candidate for hair transplant procedure, period. So guys, based on this video today, we're just trying to give you some more objective information and criteria to make sure that you would comply in order to be a good FUE candidate. And we're not anti-FUE. With that being said, just understand that any of the doctors that we guide you to, we're doing the homework for you. And you have to be on the same team. When the business model is set up for the clinic, doing 4, 5, 6 procedures a day, you get some that win, you get some that lose. Oh well, at least the clinic made money. We're guiding you towards doctors that in their best interest and your best interest, from a team perspective, you're going to get more hair, you're going to get good information, strong preventative treatment information and education, and you're going to get a great result. Great results means referrals, builds the business, and everybody's happy.
I'm really proud about the fact that with all these videos that we're making, I can tell anyone that writes me, just go watch our videos, go through all of them. And by the time you're done watching them, you'll be educated enough that you'll be able to make a great decision about the kind of doctor and kind of procedure that you choose. And that is our goal with these videos, is just to have a one-stop shop, watch these, and after this, you're going to be able to make a great decision. And if you want any additional help, after that, then give Steve a call, because like he said, he always answers his phone and he helps so many people. I love when people call me and they're like, or write me on Instagram or whatever, and they're like, I talked to Steve, I feel so much better now. I feel like I know where I should go and I have a real hair transplant plan.